Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, February 22nd, and this is a continuation of the 2024-2025 budget hearing. And if I have a motion to come out of recess.
I'll make a motion, Chair, to come out of recess.
Well, thank you, Scott. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lauren. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll get the meeting started. It's approximately 5:31. And the first item on the agenda is Health Department, page 79. Hi, Deepa. How are you?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, please do.
Give me 1 second. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right. So as I usually do, I like to take this opportunity to share a little bit about what Health and Human Services has been up to and correlate it to some of the requests that we have this year in our budget. So just some general information from the past fiscal year that really stood out to us. So the Health and Human Services departments are still busy as always. And so just some things to keep in mind in terms of, our department really is one of those departments that touches every single resident in Milford. And this past fiscal year, we responded to over 6,000 calls for service or attendance, and that's just phone calls. So that doesn't include encounters in the office itself. And then from the human services perspective, we provided over $74,000 in emergency financial assistance to Milford families. And really, again, serving residents as young as 6 months of age to as old as 97 years old of age. So we're really seeing the gamut of our residents. So with the school nursing division, and even though that account is coming next, I'll just highlight a couple of the budget requests and correlate it to this information. Our school nurses continue to see a high number of students with over 43,000 health office visits in the past fiscal year. So that's up 15% in visits from the prior fiscal year. The nurses continue to administer a variety of medications and treatments, everything from daily medications, emergency meds, tube feedings, health office visits to manage complex health conditions like ADHD, asthma, diabetes, cardiac conditions, food allergies, mental health related diagnoses. And they continue to do their mandated health screenings, over 12,000 of them last fiscal year. In addition to the school nursing, our nurses serve a dual role as public health nurses. So this past fiscal year, we hosted over 40 immunization clinics, again, serving infants as young as 6 months of age and adults at 97 years of age. We are seeing an increase in the number of immunizations provided in the area of routine immunizations. So hepatitis B, polio vaccine, hepatitis A, Tdap or tetanus. And then we're also continuing to provide flu vaccine and COVID vaccine as well. For nursing, one of the things I'll just highlight within our budget is that you'll see actually on the health side and the nursing side, we have requested an increase in overtime. And again, that is because we're we really tried this year to budget based on what we typically see in a given year. So we are always looking for funds to be able to meet our overtime needs. And so we have requested an increase in overtime in both the health department and nursing budgets. And then the environmental division. So this is our enforcement and regulatory arm of the health department. So I won't go through all of our statistics in terms of number of inspections and licenses and all of that. You can see that, and I'm happy to provide this later for anyone that would like it. But I'll just highlight again, correlated to that overtime request, we have seen this past fiscal year a 10% increase in licensed temporary food service events. So all those wonderful community events that make Milford such a great community to be a part of and to visit. Our sanitarians are doing inspections for all the food service that you see there, whether it's food trucks or tents where our service organizations might be doing fundraisers. So we are seeing an increase in those events and licenses. As well as I wanted to point out, I know often the health department is not necessarily perceived as a first responder like police or fire. However, it is important to just know that we do get called out to assist the fire and police department for a variety of incidents. And this past fiscal year, we've seen a 63% increase in calls to assist fire and police for a variety of situations. Those situations might include if there's a fire at a food service establishment after hours that requires us to go out and take any action, to a case, a troubled housing case where there might be a hoarding situation when first responders arrive on scene and they're unable to access the inside of the home due to conditions. So those are examples of times where we might be called out. And then our community health division, and I'll highlight this as well in that in our health department budget, we have requested reinstatement of this position to full-time status. This is a position that existed many years before I started with the health department as a full-time budgeted position. And over the years, it was cut to a seasonal temp part-time position and then to a contracted position. But the work of the position never went away and in fact has really just increased over the years. And so this is the community health coordinator really works on a couple of areas. First being communicable disease surveillance and monitoring. So you'll see this past fiscal year, we had over 4,500 communicable disease reported to the health department, which is required by state statute. And a variety of those conditions require follow-up monitoring and everything from tuberculosis to sexually transmitted infections to flu and COVID and other respiratory viruses. You'll see on the right side, there's a pie chart that also has foodborne illness cases that are laboratory confirmed. So that's Salmonella, E. coli, things you might hear about in the media when there's a recall on food product, which both the environmental division and the community health division are involved with in terms of the follow-up of residents who have these illnesses that might warrant a foodborne illness outbreak investigation. And then the other piece that is a primary role of this position is really health promotion and education activities within the community. And so I've just chosen to highlight a few of the things we did this last fiscal year in the area of food insecurity. The health department facilitates and coordinates a group of local providers. There are approximately 30 providers who participate on monthly meetings to discuss the state of food insecurity in Milford and talk about providers that are providing services here and if there are any gaps that are identified. Additionally, we have a collaborative focused on opioid response and prevention that meets regularly and conducts training within the community. And then more generalized health promotion and education around asthma, around healthy homes, respiratory viruses, etc. And we included just and these are just some of the logos of the partners that we work with in the community that are participants on those collaboratives and a variety of activities that we do. And then this community health coordinator is also responsible for grants management within our department. So this past fiscal year, we brought in over $550,000 in grant funding, which is about a 15% increase from the prior fiscal year. And so all of the activities around management of that and programmatically, the community health coordinator works on those items. And then we have our preparedness division, which really coming out of the pandemic, that really is the division that does all of the planning and response work around preparedness. And this past fiscal year, we had over 285 hours of volunteer service for preparedness. So with that, I'm going to pause my share for now. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Very informative. Any questions or comments from the board?
I got a couple through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. It was really great, as always. Deepa, when you said $74,000 of financial assistance, what is that? Like the energy assistance program and stuff?
Yeah, so I paused the presentation before I got to human services because I thought I might wait until we get to that account, but that is through our human services department, and that is not necessarily energy assistance in terms of being an intake site. That is emergency rent, mortgage, utilities, emergency food assistance, so through food vouchers, et cetera.
Gotcha. And that doesn't show up in the health department budget, though.
It does not. It shows up later on the third account of the night.
Gotcha.
And actually, it doesn't actually truthfully show up there because all of that is through grant funding.
Grants, sure. Okay, that's what I thought. All right. And I just had a question. So just so I understand, you're looking to reinstate a community health coordinator at a salary of $89,513, and then you're anticipating roughly $10,000 more overtime than what was budgeted last year, based on what you see as far as demand and needs in the community. So that essentially accounts for the bump in wages and that whole personnel services line item.
Correct. And I'll just point out that salary that's been included in there for the community health coordinator is based on the current non-rep ordinance for that position.
I mean, is it rational or logical to think like if you didn't add that community health coordinator in, would that drive your overtime costs higher, or does one not necessarily affect the other?
Slightly, but it wouldn't have a huge impact on the overtime. The overtime, and if you look at our prior expense, like even our 22-23 expenditures in overtime, we were at about $21,000 last fiscal year. That really is all about our sanitarians doing after hours work for temporary events and inspections and emergencies. So that really is the bulk of the overtime.
Understood. Well, thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Hey, Deepa.
Well, I would just like to comment on the, I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
No, you go.
Please.
Okay. Hey, Deepa. I always do enjoy that presentation. Always learn something new, I feel like. Wait, where was I? What does some of that grant money go towards that, 568,000?
Yeah, so the 568,000 is really tied to some of those health education initiatives. It allows us to do the opioid prevention and response work. It allows us to do our public health preparedness work, our respiratory virus PSAs that we put out to the community, our asthma home assessment program, our healthy homes assessment program. So all of that work is really through our grant funding.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? In regards to the community health coordinator, I must say I'm a little concerned about adding new positions with, you know, with already the increases that we're looking at across the board and a lot of our budgets. We did just add the deputy director back in 21-22, I believe, for your department. So that was only about 2 years ago. And I think that addressed some of the needs in your department, particularly to fill in for yourself when you weren't able to, you know, for whatever reason, not be available to perform the duties of the department. So I understood that, and certainly there may be a need, but I just need to wrap my head around a little bit about adding positions when we're really, I think, have a budget here that's straining the limits of our tax base at this point. But so that's just my initial reaction, frankly.
Sure, if I could just comment on that. So I'll just point out one, this is not really a new position. This position, again, I myself was in this position probably 17 years ago. So it's not a new position. It is really that over the past 8 years or so, our department has seen cuts to positions. And this was one of those positions that I think it was back in 2015, it went to a part-time position. And then in 2017, it went to a contractor position. But again, the work never really went away. And you know, it was really the burden of the work fell to my own position and was trying to be absorbed by that, as well as other positions within the department, which is really not sustainable. So it's not really a new position. It is really an old position that we are requesting reinstatement of. And that's largely because, as I'm sure you've seen around, everything, it seems, not everything, but a lot of things are really tied to public health. The social determinants of health are far and wide, and we see it even more post-pandemic as not just in Milford, but across the country, people are recovering, and we're seeing how much public health really ties to everything from housing to food insecurity to all the work that Human Services does with our most vulnerable clients, to the food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, all of that. And so the need is great in terms of the investment in infrastructure around staffing to be able to really meet the needs of our residents. And so that is the work of this position. And we're seeing more of a need for it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I think you're still on deck for page 95. The Education Health Services, School Nurses, page 95.
Thank you. So I'll just highlight a couple of things in the budget I mentioned. The overtime, the primary changes that you'll see in this budget are one in the area of It's the medical dental line item. We requested an increase there, and that is the line item where we pay for our substitute school nurses. So when a school nurse is out for the day, we provide a substitute nurse. Over the years, the rate for that substitute nurse is at $28 an hour currently, and it is very difficult in this market to find nurses who are willing to work at that rate because they can make quite a bit more in different settings. And so what has happened over the years is that when we are not able to have enough subs in our pool, then we have to utilize a temporary nursing agency. And the rate per hour for those agencies are much higher at about $85 an hour. So we end up having to expend a significant amount if we have to go into that temporary agency pool. And so we are requesting this additional funding to be able to increase the rate for the sub-nurses from $28 an hour to $32 an hour. That is more on average what we see in other districts that are around us and that are similar to us. We were at the very low end. $28 is at the low end of the range compared to other districts around us, with about $42 being the high end of the range. And then we also have an increase in the seasonal temp line item. And that is specific to, we have health clerks currently at our high school and middle school. We have one at each high school and then one that covers the middle schools. And those clerks are part-time, 19 hours a week, no benefits, paid at minimum wage, $15 an hour for just the school year. And so that additional funding is for an elementary level clerk because there is a significant amount of clerical work, particularly at the elementary level when we talk about incoming preschoolers and kindergartners. And so that clerk would be spread out across all of our elementary schools to be able to assist with all of that work at that level. And then the one other thing I'll mention, and this does cross over to back to the health department account as well, is in both accounts, we've requested additional funds in the medical supply line item, you'll see. And I just wanted to point that out because that really goes towards additional needs. The cost of medical supplies has increased. The cost of vaccines has increased. And so that's why we're asking for that increase. But also the health department, as one of our new initiatives, is moving towards being able to bill for services, starting with immunizations. So we are now a licensed clinic. We are now an approved provider with Medicare and Medicaid. That all has happened in just the past couple of months. And so the goal is that starting hopefully in the fall, we'll be able to bill for immunization services, which will bring in some revenue, but we will also need funds to be able to purchase supplies as well. So I'm happy to take questions on nursing.
Pete, but when you say bill, you effectively what you're talking about is students that may get immunizations through the schools?
No, so this would be not for students. This would be for adults. So for students, we go through the state children's vaccine program. So immunizations are free of charge. So this would be for our adult immunizations. So flu vaccine, COVID vaccine, Hep B. There was a little chart I had before, tetanus, all of those things. Currently, we are basically a cash or check operation. If people are going to have to pay for vaccines through us, we do not accept insurance. This will enable us to accept insurance and be able to recoup the cost in many cases for the vaccine purchase itself, as well as bill insurance for an administrative fee.
So the school nurses are administering those shots?
Yeah, so that comes into play in some of the overtime costs as well. So we have a monthly immunization clinic that we hold at the health department, second Tuesday of every month, where residents can come and get whatever immunizations they need, and that is staffed by our nurses. In addition to when it's flu season, COVID season, they work those clinics as well.
How many do you typically see in a normal year?
How many?
Like how many immunizations are they administering?
So I
Is that in the deck that you shared earlier?
Yeah, in terms of just if we look at flu and COVID alone, this past fiscal year, we did over 1,900 vaccines. And then we did about an additional 400 or so of other adult vaccines.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions on school nurses? If none, Milford Human Services Department, page 90. I think these are the grants, which I also believe goes through your department, correct?
It does. And I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. So for human services, and sorry, the view on this is not great. Just to give you an idea of human services, last fiscal year, we served over 25 individuals in the community, which was a total of about 1,350 households. And so going back to that financial assistance that we've provided directly to the community for emergencies, you'll see we've included some statistics around our major services that we're providing in terms of utility, counseling and emergency assistance, rent and mortgage emergency assistance, emergency lodging, food voucher, holiday meal programs, farmers market vouchers, and our holiday adopt a family program. So you can see the number of households and individuals we've served. The last fiscal year, we saw a 92% increase in the amount of households we were able to assist with utility, emergency utility assistance. We had that capacity to do that because of some of the grant funding that we were able to receive through the Federal Emergency Food and Shelter Program. And then we've also seen an increase in the request for emergency food voucher assistance. So this is for individuals who are in need of emergency food, who are not able to access some of our local pantries. They might have special dietary needs. They may come to us during an emergency hour where the pantries might not be open. And so we're able to, through a partnership with ShopRite and through grant funding, provide emergency food assistance. And I wanted to just give you an overview too. While it's been great that we've been able to bring in additional grant funding, what we've also seen is that it used to be, even when Human Services was first consolidated under the health department, that this pie chart looked a bit different in that the human services proportion was less, and we saw more financial assistance provided through the United Way and the Milford chapter of the Salvation Army. This past year, the Milford chapter of the Salvation Army while the funds are still accessible, the board is no longer in place. And so Human Services has seen a shift and has been able to stand in the gap to be able to fulfill those emergency requests and to be able to liaison with the Salvation Army Hartford location to be able to try to access some of those emergency funds for our community members. And then we continue to be an intake site for TEAM for energy assistance applications. We're an intake site for the renters rebate program through the state, as well as for Dollar Energy, which is an emergency water assistance program through the Regional Water Authority. And then the other arm of Human Services is our Youth and Family Services Division. So this is the division that puts on the Mayor's Youth Award, which last year honored 240 plus youth. We work on a variety of workshops within the community and collaborate with a variety of partners in the community. This program as well, Salvation Army used to be responsible for a back to school backpack program within the community. With their board kind of closing shop, we felt like it was important to be able to still provide back to school supplies for families that were in need. And so Human Services stepped in and said we would take that on. We anticipated running a smaller program because of the resources we had in-house in terms of staffing. But in actuality, we provided 223 backpacks, which was a 30% increase from the prior year. And we were able to partner with Salvation Army to get shoe vouchers for the beginning of the school year to be able to help families purchase shoes for their kids. And then provided basic needs assistance. So that is also in the form of food vouchers or food gift cards for families in need of those services. So,
Sorry, through you, Chair. Just a couple questions on the top of that slide, Deepa. You noted off of memory, it was like there's a massive increase in some of the services that you provided money for. I mean, it was like a 100% increase, couple 100% increase, or whatever it was, compared to 22, 23. What do you think that's attributable to? Is it, and how does that compare to maybe pre-COVID? Because like a lot of people, I assume, receive money from the federal government to help with day-to-day needs. All sorts of studies show that there was a record high level of cash in savings and checking accounts nationwide. Like, is it just a function of like, well, a lot of people just kind of hit the end of their cash, like they hit the end of their rope, and now we're seeing a demand that was consistent with pre-COVID demands?
yeah, so we're seeing it's a little bit of a both and story there. The two areas where we really saw increases were in utility assistance and food voucher assistance. So one, there is a piece of this that by being able to bring in more grant funding for those purposes, then we're able to meet the needs that are coming to us. So previously, we were not able to meet the needs. There was a gap. There still is a gap of people who need that emergency assistance, but the community isn't able to meet that need. But we are definitely seeing more requests post-pandemic. So I always say to anybody that'll listen that Health and Human Services, while the pandemic is technically over, we are still in recovery mode with our residents from a health perspective and from a human services perspective. So we do have a number of residents who are still in recovery, who are still feeling the impacts of the pandemic, whether it was job loss, childcare costs, and then all the other costs that we have and the current economic climate. So, we are seeing increases in requests due to that. We're seeing clients come to us. Previously, pre-pandemic, there were we knew who our clients were and people who came to us sort of on a regular basis for assistance. We are seeing a new group of individuals who are Milford residents, working families who are in a tight spot.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody, any other further comments or questions on Human Services Department? Okay, thank you, Deepa. I think that's your last department.
It is. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, thank you, as always, very helpful and informative. Thank you. Human Resources Department, page 41.
Good evening,
Tanya.
everyone. How are you?
Good, welcome.
Tanya Barnes, the HR director with the city. I've been with the city now a little over 10 years. It's hard to believe that. So just again, a little overview of the department, what we do. We're responsible for recruitment and all the onboarding that goes with that. We have about 500 employees on the city side. And we also do administration for retirees, and we have about 800 retirees or so. On the HR side in the recruitment, we do all of our testing through civil service. Once we hire those candidates, we do all the onboarding. Routinely, we have about an average of 50 vacancies that we're trying to fill continuously, because as we fill a position, somebody new retires. And so that kind of keeps us going all the time. Responsible for all of the employee relations matters, benefit administrations for active employees, to include health benefits, unemployment benefits. We do run all of the wellness initiatives for the city employees. That also includes all of the Board of Ed employees whenever we do wellness initiatives, and all of the employee recognition and rewards. I'm the administrator for the HRS system with the city and work very closely with finance, payroll. On the pension side, as I said, we had a little over 800 retirees that we administer pension payments, work with the Pension and Retirement Board on a monthly basis. And we also handle all of the retiree health benefits administration and the Medicare Part B reimbursement program, which is a big program. We also work with departments to assist with training, whether it's for professional development or team building activities, or just technical training that we might need. And lastly, one of the big areas that I'm involved with is on labor relations. So in collaborations with the city attorney's office, we in-house handle all of the contract negotiations. All of the grievances go through my office. I'm usually the third step in the process in all of the contract unions, and then any arbitration hearings that we may need to handle, as well as MPPs and CHROs. So that's in a nutshell what HR is responsible for. I'll go quickly through my budget and the budget requests that I put forth. Overall, there were a couple of lines that I requested increases, and I'll explain those. In our seasonal temporary line, last year I was able to have that line at 2,500. I was looking to increase that to 5,000. We started a program of hiring a summer intern, a college summer intern, somebody that is seeking to go into the HR field. And we wanted to expose them to the public sector, because it's definitely a very challenging role to fill, especially in the public sector. It's very different than managing HR in the private sector. So we thought that this would be a good way, and it was very successful last year. But in order to have a college student to be able to pay about $16 an hour, which is just slightly above minimum wage for about 30 hours a week for the summer, we would need to increase that line. So I asked for a $2,500 increase.
Okay.
On the medical and professional fee line, I increased that by $500. One moment. My apologies for that. There was just noise in the background. That line we use for independent medical exams. Whenever we have per pension agreements, we have any employee who's seeking retirement on a service-connected disability. Most of the contract, if not all, require for them to undergo independent medical exams through 2 different physicians. And those have definitely increased in cost. This last year, as you can see, we've already expended over $17,000 because we had 4 employees who requested service-connected disabilities. With 2 employees alone that we had to send for IMEs, each IME was about $5,000. And so we are just looking to adjust that line. We have partnered with a company that can support us in assisting us in providing IMEs and identifying doctors that will be able to do those. However, they did say that the cost did increase between $1,500 and $3,000 per exam, depending on the nature of the exam. Under medical and professional fees, that line we use to pay for pre-employment exams, CDL testing, quarterly DOT testing that we have to do. Those tests have increased in cost. We used to pay about $51 per test, and now they're $69. So that was just to account for that increase in the cost. Under the training expense line, I'm seeking to increase that as well, because we have been working with a lot of departments in doing professional development training, doing team building and some other things to just mitigate issues. And so we just felt that it would be best to put some resources towards that. Sometimes training tends to be the last thing that we kind of focus on, but the departments that we have been doing some training with have definitely yielded positive results, and people are trained in technical skills, but also just skills to be able to create a more efficient and cohesive work environment. Under advertising, again, I increased that about $500 because per our civil service rules, we have to post everything in newspapers. And as you all may know, advertising in papers, just a normal ad is about $1,500 or $1,800. And the last line was under office supplies. That line had not changed since I came here 10 years ago, but our office supplies certainly have increased significantly. So I was seeking to increase that line by $1,000.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Thank you, Tanya. Any questions or comments? The Human Resources Director?
Mr. Chair, through you,
Yes.
what is the special project that you have listed? Special project manager part-time.
Yes.
What
So
was that?
that position, when Mayor Smith was here, we had discussed bringing on a part-time position into my office. Certainly, I can say that since I've been with the city, the role of the Human Resource Department has expanded significantly. When I first came on board, it was the Personnel Department, and we essentially did civil service and the pension administration, but essentially was just the pension calculations. Since I've come on board, we have created a full service human resources department where we do all the recruitment, all various types of tests. We have brought on some wellness initiatives that do take a lot of time and but are very welcome by the employees. Additionally, with the benefits, when I first started, benefits were administered out of accounting. And so we brought those in-house in HR to really create a one-stop shop for our employees, in addition to retirees. The Medicare Part B program was also administered out of accounting that was brought into my office. And then labor relations was brought in-house as well. When I first came on board, we used to have outside counsel to do all of the contract negotiations. And those are now handled by the assistant city attorney, and myself. So in growing that work, there's been a lot of work. And when we implemented Munis, I became, as Peter became the administrator on the finance side, I became the HRS administrator on the HR side. So we're the go-to point of contact for Munis in those areas. And so I was looking for some support for me, especially when I'm going through negotiations, to assist with special projects such as compensation studies, rewriting the civil service rules, doing some analysis and costing as we go through contract negotiations and proposals and things of that nature. With Mayor Smith's support, I was able to come to this board and then the Board of Aldermen, and was funded the position this year. So right now I do have somebody in that role on a seasonal temporary basis. I included it in the budget as a permanent part-time position. I was seeking for a position to be working for 20 hours a week. And unfortunately, it was not approved. So that's what that position was for.
Okay, because I had the impression it was like a one-off, but you're really talking about expanding the staffing within the department.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lima, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Any further questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
evening. Okay, Public Library, page 35.
Hi there.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, I'm Chris Angeli. I'm the director of the public library. Before I start, I want to say I am having some microphone issues. So if you cannot hear me, please just let me know.
What? Okay.
Thank you. I am joined tonight by our assistant director, Suzanne Harrison Thomas. Before I get started, I, like the other departments, sort of want to give you a little snapshot about what we do here at the library. We provide a lot of the educational, instructional, and entertainment needs for our residents here in Milford. We have close to 20,000 registered Milford patrons here at the library. Last fiscal year 23, we circulated almost 281,000 items out of this building. We had over 110,000 people visit the library. We hosted 537 programs for all ages. Those are ages from birth to seniors, with an attendance of 13,510 people. So we are an active building. I think we are well regarded by our community, and we have a staff that try very hard to supply the community with everything that they do need. In addition to our regular library type services, we also have things like public computer access, Wi-Fi access, printing, mobile printing, scanning and fax services, instructional technology assistance, local genealogy help, and that's just to name a little bit. In going through our budget, it is once again kept flat in most line items with small decreases in others, with a few exceptions. The biggest one that is probably the most noticeable is to our electronic media account. Electronic media are all of our downloadable content, so downloadable ebooks, audiobooks, magazines, and streaming video. While it has always been a popular service for us, when COVID hit, it definitely skyrocketed and has continued to skyrocket. Fiscal year 23, we circulated 18,000 ebooks, 16,000 audiobooks, downloadable audiobooks, and 5,000 magazines. Every single month, the increase for that content and request for that content goes up at least 45% month to month. From the start of the pandemic, we've had a 3,000% increase in the requests for downloadable content. It is not going away, and it is something that we need to accommodate. Currently, as of today, the average wait period for a downloadable ebook, audiobook, is 119 days. That is completely unacceptable, but we don't have the funds to provide the content. That's 21,000 holds on audiobooks and 38,000 holds on ebooks. So it's something our patron and our community is demanding. And we would like to be able to provide a much better service for them. Currently, what we do is we buy into a shared collection of e-content with our library consortium. And then on top of that, we also spend some money to purchase content that is available to Milford residents only. So we do a little bit of both. Again, though, it is really, we're just not seeing a way to accommodate that in our current budget structure. Along with that, I like to think of it as our e-content are really just our books, and they're just in a different format. Our current book budget, $105,000, has not increased since fiscal year 2010. So in over 13 years, we've never even seen an increase in the physical book budget, yet have managed it. There's no way we can manage it with the e-content. I see it as an equity issue for a lot of our residents. People necessarily get here into our physical space, can access the library and library materials from their home. We just need to be able to provide the content. Going along with that, you may have seen there's been some news yesterday before the Legislative Assembly. There's a bill being put forth to make the costs for libraries to obtain e-content more affordable. We're hoping that goes through, because currently the licensing agreements that we have for e-content are really stringent. So that usually brings up a lot of questions, and I'm happy to answer anything on the e-content portion of my budget request, but that really is the big one. Second thing that really is a new item for us is a new line item for programs and services. So I did mention the amount of programs that we had in fiscal year 23 being 537 programs. That's in a building that's only open about 300 days a year. So we have multiple programs a day serving thousands of people. Currently, our Friends of the Library, a completely volunteer organization, has picked up the cost for all of that. Our Friends of the Library, through book sales, special events, and programs, provide the library and the Milford patrons, Milford community, with about $36,000 worth of programming costs. I don't know if that is sustainable. I'd like to start taking some of that back and putting it into our regular budget. It is one of our core services here, and to be reliant on all volunteer help for that, I don't think it's sustainable in the long run. So I'd like to start adding a line item back into our budget for that, and I put in a very modest budget of $2,500. That $2,500 sort of offset by the removal of our other supplies and charges lines, which we used to have, and I've gotten rid of that one. So those are really the two biggies, and I'm happy to answer any questions on those services or requests.
Very good. Thank you for your presentation. Any questions or comments from the board?
Hi, Chris. It's Lauren
Hi.
here. Yeah, I mean, you guys do really offer some wonderful programs in I use the Libby app, and I'm constantly on a wait list.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, we're hoping to decrease that wait list for you.
I usually just come in with my children anyway and browse.
Mm-hmm.
Just what does the seasonal temporary cover?
The seasonal temporary are all of our part-time staff. So we have 15 full-time staff here at the library.
Yeah.
We're open close to 50 hours a week, and to provide adequate and safe desk coverage on our desks. It's our part-time staff.
That's it for me.
Quick question. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Sure, hi.
And just so I'm clear, because I may have missed it. So the books jumping up to 105,000, that's the ebooks you were referring to?
No, that is our physical book collection amount. So our physical books have been funded at $105,000 a year since at least 2010. our ebook, which is the electronic media line item, that's the one that pays for the e-content.
That's the
And
one,
where
okay.
the increase is coming in. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
People are reading differently. They're reading and listening differently. And we need to accommodate that.
Absolutely.
I had a quick question on the ebooks. If you download an ebook, is there a time frame where the license is valid, or at some point does?
Yes, so the way it's a little complicated. So the way ebook content works for public libraries is that we purchase leases from the suppliers. So we don't purchase a digital file outright. We purchase a lease.
Right,
With that lease comes limitations. So we own that lease for either a certain period of time, 1 year or 2 years, or a certain number of checkouts by patrons.
okay,
Then when we check it out to the patron, it's still a one, even though it's a digital file, it's a one-on-one loan. So if we purchase one lease, it goes to one person, and then there becomes a wait list. Big issue is for libraries, for us to purchase that content, the prices are much higher.
right,
So for an ebook that you may purchase through Amazon or Audible for your own collection that you would own permanently, an ebook might cost you, $50, and that's a high one, $45, $50. That same ebook for the library to purchase is probably costing us $150. The costs are just much, much higher than they are for physical content, but yet that's where the demand is. If your question referred to you checking it out, when our patrons get the e-content, it does go out for a certain period of time and then gets automatically returned.
I'm sure you've done the math, but if you purchased it for $200, would you then be able to use it on an unlimited basis, both on time and quantity of checkouts?
There are specific terms based on the publisher of the book.
Okay,
So if it's specific checkouts, we will purchase a lease for, say, 26 checkouts. After 26 checkouts, it goes away for us. If it's a time limited one, it's as many people that can check it out during that time period. So if you keep it out for 1 week, we can check it out to more people. You keep it out for 3 weeks, it's less.
but do you actually have the option to buy it, to just buy the title outright? Or is that,
In e-content, no, it's a lease.
it's only that's your only option that you have as a library?
Correct, only option.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And if there's no other questions, comments, we will move on. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Elections, page 14.
Hi, good
Sorry,
evening.
am I on the right page? Yes, elections, page 14, sorry. Hi, Karen, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Hi, Carrie, how are you?
Hi. Hi. I think Deborah's here as well. Karen, do you want to start or would you like me to start?
Hi, Deborah.
I'll turn it over to you. I'm sure the board is aware that it's going to be a very different year for the registrar's office and mine somewhat in terms of a support role. In addition to absentee ballot administration that my office handles, the registrars will be dealing with early voting. So right now, there's basically 3 ways to vote. You can vote by absentee ballot, you can do early voting, or you can vote at the polls. And this is the first time we have early voting. We may potentially have 3 elections. One is the presidential preference primary, April 2nd. The second one may be August 13th, which is a state primary. And then we have the general election in November. And the new law states that there's going to be 4 days of early voting for the April presidential primary, 7 days of early voting for the August primary, and 14 days of early voting for the general election. So it's the first year. Things are very uncertain. We don't know what to expect in terms of public education and outreach, letting people know that early voting is available. So for my office and Carrie and Deborah's office, it's we just have to figure our way through this in terms of estimating supplies and staffing. But it's a very big lift, and I'll turn it over to Carrie and Deborah because this is really their area of expertise.
Thank you.
Hi again, everybody. Our biggest concern is, well, first we want to just let you know that the April presidential preference primary is part of this current fiscal year that we're in. So we are discussing next fiscal year's budget, which would include the August primary and the presidential election. And our worry, and Deborah, chime in, please. Don't let me speak for you if I'm not. Is that in presidential election years past, just for a primary and election, it's cost close to $150,000 for us to run it out of the elections account. So we're very concerned about the number now at 135,000 with 14 days of early voting, which has to be run just like election day, just not the 14 hours of voting, but in the case of the November election, it would be 10 days from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., which is 8 hours each day. And then 2 days that would be from 8 in the morning until 8 at night, which is obviously 12 hours each day. So it adds a significant number of hours that we have to provide the voters with the same level of service that they see on what was once just one voting day. Meaning we have a moderator that we're required to have. We've been informed by the Secretary of the State that we, Deborah and I, although certified moderators, are not eligible to serve in that capacity to try to save money, because that was something we thought of. And we also have other required positions. And because Milford has 9 polling locations, we will have to be able to provide the ballot that is applicable to each one of those voting districts in one centralized location. So although it won't be quite the number, it will be a larger number than the amount of money that we're provided with right now to staff adequately to make sure that we're holding that. And that's not, those of you who've seen us present to you before know that we don't want a primary election any more than you do, any more than the taxpayers do. But the reality of the situation has been that we are seeing more and more primary elections. And it's just the way the world is working that people want to have ballot access, and we have to provide that service to the voters. So I can go through line by line why we asked for $208,000 if you'd like, or we could open it up for questions, or Deborah certainly can give you more information than I've provided if she feels there's something more urgent. But this is a very heavy lift, as Karen said, to get this off the ground and get it running. And we're hoping that the presidential primary will teach us a lot about what we have to do come August and certainly in November. So at this point, Deborah, if you have something, or if anybody wants to ask questions.
I would like to just re-emphasize that when we planned our budget, we spent a lot of time projecting what it would be. And when we submitted it, we did an extra form. Actually, Karen did, because it's her account. We said we firmly believe an election budget must start at 135, and then with the extra hours required, everything that we're saying, the required positions that we have to do to staff just for the 120 hours for November, never mind the additional, if we have an August primary, 64 additional hours, which then, it's monumental, and we have to do the work. We have to provide so that the integrity of the elections are fair and it's there. We didn't make this up. It was put on us. The voters voted for this. Now we are going to have to figure out how to pay for it. So I don't know how, I mean, we can say, okay, so maybe we won't have the August primary. All right, so then, but still 135, we've already used 135 already for presidential years. This is a presidential year. This is a presidential year with a primary, presidential preference primary. It's going to happen. It's going to cost money. And we've never, on every presidential preference primary, we've never had enough money. We always have to come in November and ask for transfers. So that's all. That's just my frustration level. And I don't know, Carrie, I got kicked off of Zoom for a minute, but I didn't know if you asked the question that you were going to ask first.
I did not, but I want to add before we, when we talk about 120 hours extra time for early voting in the November election, we also have to account for the administrative time that we can't just show up at 10 o'clock with voters in line and expect to provide them with a good voting experience. The checker books, the ballots themselves will have to get out of lockdown each morning. So there will, their staff will have to come in to prepare for the opening of early voting time. So it's not just the voting time, it's the administrative cost that will go into opening up the polling location for the day and then locking it down and doing the chain of custody. So it's more than just the hours of voting that we're talking about having to staff on this. And I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. Deborah and I did want to know if your board and Chairman Lima, you probably would be able to answer that, could add money to our budget, or if that's something that only the Board of Aldermen can do.
No, we can add money.
So obviously we would very much like to request that we have money added back into the elections account in order for us to pay adequately for the upcoming election. If you don't feel as though you want to budget for the primary, we're still looking at an additional $51,300 in terms of the staffing that I just mentioned. That would be required. So that would bring us.
What I would like, if you're possible, would be, you mentioned a spreadsheet or something that I don't think we need to go through it line by line, but if that is something that you could provide to Peter's office.
Sure.
And he can provide
Peter.
the board, I think that would be helpful.
We did provide that to Peter when
We did, Peter.
there. So I've made some adjustments to try to break it down even further. I'd be
Sure,
happy.
that type of information would be helpful, and I think that way the board could take a look at it and consider it when we go through our technical session.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And if anybody has any questions, we certainly would be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Yes, Scott.
Yeah, through you, Chairman. Just to clarify, so you're under elections, when you're saying you want this board to add more money, are you talking essentially put forth the full request of $208,000? Or are you talking in
Yes.
addition to that,
No, that,
the 208?
yes.
For context purposes, what the past presidential cycle, what was spent that particular year? And I assume that year there was no special election in August or anything like that.
Well, so that was COVID year. So the presidential preference primary that we're having in April was scheduled for February, I believe, and it got pushed to April. And because of COVID, then got pushed to August, which made it fall within the budget year. So the expense was $147,000, except that when you calculate all the transfers in, it was a total expense of 190, as I believe. Let me just double check my notes. Oh, no, 147,264, and that's without any early voting. That was with a primary and a general election. That was the expense from the election account, including any grant money that we got for COVID and things like that. which we've also applied for this time as well, and are hopeful that in this fiscal year that we're currently in, we will receive a $10,500 grant to help defray costs.
Which will be for April's primary, actually.
And I want to say that again, $147,000 for one primary day and one general election. We are adding potentially, well, for sure, 14 days of early voting. And then we potentially are adding another 7 days of early voting if we have a primary.
That's the early voting that's really,
It is
Yes.
early
budget
voting that,
buster.
because we are required, like I said, to have a moderator each and every day, and it can't be us. It has to be a moderator that has been certified through a training program that the Secretary of the State's office provides.
this may show my ignorance, but can you opt out of early voting, or can you set parameters that are shorter?
No, I know,
So-
if we could, I would.
I was wondering the same thing.
No,
We cannot opt out.
Thanks,
or
Lauren, for letting me jump on it, like, land on the grenade for the stupid question.
No, not at all.
not.
So it's mandated. In other words, the state says
Yes.
this, or in
Yes,
some cases, the federal, this is what you got to do, and
That's
figure
correct.
out how to pay for it.
Every community in Connecticut will be holding the same amount of early voting days.
And they
this-
don't, yeah, okay, gotcha.
What was how many days did we currently have for early voting?
We don't have any. This was
So
passed
just-
the last election cycle by the state legislature, and it has been implemented as of January 1st. And the first election that we will see it is April 2nd's presidential preference primary. And we, the Democrats and the Republicans both have presidential preference primaries.
Okay, so we're talking, we need somebody at the desk. They can't just go drop their ballot in that little box.
Correct. That's absentee ballot, right? That still exists as well, but this
Right.
is coming in person.
Right.
In this particular case, similar to the way we implemented election day registration, where people could register to vote for the first time or
Right.
change their registration on election day and then vote. We did that whole practice within our office so that we were sort of learning together as an office how this process was going to work and it's step by step. And certainly we need the computerized voter registration system accessible to us as we will need it for early voting, similar to that of election day registration. So our hope, given that it's a primary, primaries have a generally lower turnout, that we'll be able to both train our staff and others to run this effectively and then ultimately move it to a bigger location come August primary and the general election.
Good. All right.
Hmm.
Well, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, we'll still have the floor for register of voters, page 15.
Similarly, that you've heard from other departments already tonight, in order to implement this extra work, it equates these hours that we're talking about for early voting and the administrative opening and closing of the said early voting day will primarily fall upon us, Deborah and myself, and our staff. And so we've requested overtime money so that these people can be compensated for what equates to another 12 weeks of work in this upcoming fiscal year. When you take those, we're a 20-hour-a-week office. So when you take an office that normally works 4-hour days and you've implemented early voting, which is 8 hours in a day, we're basically working 2 days in 1 day now. So we have to compensate these people for their extra hours. And so that's why we've asked for additional overtime and additional seasonal temporary money. And I certainly understand the fiscal concerns that we have as a community, but they have to be paid for the work that they do. So that's why we've asked for significant increases in those two areas. Travel and conferences, we also asked for more because there are 5 offered conference dates by the Secretary of the State. We are not only talking about training for early voting, we're talking about training on a new computerized voter registration system to handle early voting because the current system really doesn't handle that. We're talking about election management system, which is the way that we report the results at the end of the night. We will need to be trained on that. So again, if you can add money back, this is not something that we're taking lightly, but we all need to be trained on how to use these new tools in order to run elections in a way we've never run them before. And that's why we asked for 2,500 in the travel and conferences. And then, again, we understand financial restraint, but file cabinets for our office are not just a standard file cabinet. They are fireproof, and they are required by state statute to be fireproof because they house the voter registration cards for every voter. So not only do we have a computerized voter registration system that keeps track of every registered voter, but we are required to keep a paper copy of that registration. And it is required to be fireproof. And, our worry is that as registrations increase in town, that the other part that increases is our need for storage of these ballots on an early voting day. That also is required to be in a fireproof safe. So we want to have ample space at 6 or 8 o'clock at night at an early voting to lock them up in a fireproof way right within our office, and then move them to the city clerk's fireproof vault for storage until counting on the actual election day. So can we get away with it this time? Perhaps, but this is a requirement that we will need sooner rather than later. Deborah, do you agree?
I totally agree. And none of this will go away. I mean, we really did a projection. We studied early voting to the best of our ability and considered all of the things to try to use our staff first and the people that are already trained and who are the experts and are the centralized state version of the database, and also for the chain of custody. And we had put all of this in, I guess, what they used to call the OBR1, all of our justification. We did include in that. I mean, we just didn't make this stuff up. We took it very seriously to project so that we don't have to come back and ask for contingency funds in November. These are real things, and it's not going to go away. It's only going to continue for the rest of our election life. That is now a new thing for the state of Connecticut. Early voting is here to stay.
Thank you, Deborah.
Okay.
Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, Carrie, thank you. Deborah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, city clerk, page 22.
Hi, I can keep this short. All is going well. I have no increases requested, and I can take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions or comments from the board? It looks like a fairly flat budget request.
Actually down, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
It's an outlier.
You know, what I did was I restructured one of the positions in my office. Used to be 3 assistant city clerks, and we created a new position called the Certified Vitals Clerk, which is like a step, I guess, pay grade below. And I just, after being in the office and getting a better understanding of the flow and responsibilities, and so it's working out really well.
Excellent. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thanks. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Okay, we'll move right on. Council on Aging, page 87. Can't read my own writing.
Good evening, everyone. Can you all
Yeah,
hear me?
page
okay?
87.
Yes?
Hi, Lenore. How are
Can
you?
everyone hear me okay?
You're a little quiet on my end, but I think, let me turn mine up. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, in terms of the budget, we are remaining flat. We are not asking for any increase. Everything stays the same. If you'd like me to tell you a little bit about the center and how we operate, I am happy to do that. Otherwise, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
Well, I know you do great work. I'm familiar with the operations, but of course, if any members of the board have any questions, like any information, please feel free.
I do have a nice PowerPoint, just like Deepa had, but I wasn't sure if you're interested in that.
Well, we're interested. If you want to provide a little bit of information, that'd be fine. Maybe it might be helpful. We know we have an idea, but
Sure.
it'd be
So
helpful.
I'll read off everything I have. So in terms of the senior center, we operate 52 weeks of the year. This is for individuals 55 plus. There is a membership fee of $15. It remained $15 for quite a number of years now. We're operating Sunday through Friday, so there's 6 days of operation. The programming department offers nearly 4,000 engaging activities and events throughout the year. This includes daily activities that they come to, like their bingos and reading and puzzles, but it also includes travel opportunities, special events, social gatherings, entertainment, educational opportunities. Our membership attendance in total of what is approximately 45,000. It's actually 45, almost 46,000 annually, with about 1,900 individuals coming in with current membership. As I said, membership is $15. We do have a small amount of non-residents that are able to gain membership at $30. We have a volunteer team that has donated their time, approximately 9,000 hours of service of volunteer time, which is a great cost saving. Our transportation department, we had retired a couple of vehicles, purchased a couple of new vehicles. We upgraded our communication system for safety and well-being of our passengers. It has GPS capabilities. It's wonderful. Our Aaron's Respite program is designed for individuals who have a dementia or Alzheimer's. We currently have about 20 participants in the program. We incorporate evidence-based activities such as music, art, and pet therapy. We most recently had a miniature pony, and they're now friends with a miniature pony, which I love. The Meals on Wheels program serves approximately 100 medically frail homebound individuals 60 plus. And they provide now, the program has built up over the last couple of years. We serve approximately 20,000 meals annually through that program. The Milford Food Bank, we added a delivery vehicle. We had one years ago, but unfortunately it was no longer serviceable, excuse me. But now with our delivery vehicle, we're able to deliver our foods from our food bank to individuals who have a limited mobility or are recuperating from some sort of hospitalization or whatnot. Our operation hours for that program was extended from 4 days a week to 5 days a week to really look at the way we're serving individuals in the community. We've seen our numbers of folks coming to the food bank increase. We have approximately 330 clients that come to us monthly at this time. We've expanded, we added more of a frozen and fresh food offerings so that we ensure that folks are able to not only have the shelf stable, but also get some healthy options as well. Our mini lunch program provides between 120 to 150 homemade meals here. This is not through a federal program. These are our own workers that are making the meals here. The cost for the program is $3.50. This is actually an increase. It used to be $3 for the last 12 years until recently. We did bump it a teeny bit. Doesn't seem to affect much in terms of clients and the membership wanting to utilize that program. And social services, I have handled approximately 4,100 social service calls, ranging from requests from gift cards, grocery gift cards, to wellness calls, application assistance. They collaborate with different social service agencies. They offer a monthly Alzheimer's caregiver support group. They host an annual flu clinic, a health fair, and now a heart health fair that will be happening tomorrow. We also offer daytime warming and cooling in the summer for individuals who might be experiencing anything from being unhoused in our communities to having something happening within their own home and needing to be here for a time for safety reasons. That's pretty much everything in a nutshell.
That's a lot.
We do a lot.
It is a lot. Well, you do great work.
And we love doing it every day. We really do. I have a wonderful, compassionate group of folks. There are 42 paid staff that runs between part-time and 3 salaries. I'm one of 3 of the salaried individuals here. Mostly everyone else is part-time, and we have approximately 10 per diem staff that's with us. So we do a lot, and we're very grateful for the grant that the city of Milford has provided to the senior center, because this is abnormal in a good way. And it's the way that every city should operate when it comes to serving our older adults in the community. They should not say, well, let's skimp on this because they're older. No. These are the folks that have been paying taxes, that are supporting schools once their kids are gone off to college and making their own families. It's the time for us to support them all the time. And I'm so happy the city does this and offers this grant as part of that commitment to our folks here. Additionally
Thank
to
you,
our
Lenore.
grant.
It's an asset for the city.
Yes, I know. I can keep going. I'm so sorry, but
Yeah, no, you're fine. I appreciate the information as to support. Any questions or comments
Yeah,
from the
please.
board?
Just one question through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Lenore, for the summary, and thank you for all you do. What percentage of your overall budget is the Milford grant, City of Milford grant you get?
so the grant for the city itself, percentage of it covers approximately 85% of all monies coming into the center. I do actively grant write, so we receive grants through the United Way, CDBG. Most recently, I picked up a grant through the Area Agency on Aging of South Central Connecticut. And I'm always looking for opportunities that we can help, kind of subsidize the programs we have.
Great. Thank you.
Good question. Okay. Don't see any other questions or comments. So Lenore, thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Page 87, Milford Fine Arts Council. Hello, Paige.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I want to just start by saying that the Milford Arts Council continues to grow, continues to offer new programs, services, and events across the city. We probably provide 250 days, evenings of programming throughout the year. That's probably an increase of about 30 or more activities. To do a quick rundown, we have 3 main stage theatrical productions, which take about a month each from our calendar year. 2 plays in development, which are staged readings of new plays. 1 Shakespeare in Eisenhower Park, started last year. We have a East-West Play Fest of original 1-act plays that we've been doing since COVID in behind the Historical Society, which has been a fantastic partnership. We have 8 hosted exhibits between the MAC and the Firehouse Gallery. We have 9 comedy shows, which is a new series, 9 open mic, 30 plus concerts, 3 new young family programs, 3 outreach special events, which are membership drives and donor sponsor programs, 3 all age, all inclusive showcases, and 2 major fundraisers. We also have public community programs that happen throughout the city. The Sand Sculpture Contest, which is in its 48th year this year in Walnut Beach. The East-West Play Fest, which I mentioned before, which is 18 years going. Porch Fest, which if you look at the times that we skipped during COVID, this was also started in collaboration with the Economic Development Commission. Porch Fest, the Bowie Tree, which is its 3rd year this year at Lisbon Landing, and the Meet Me at the Bench permanent art project that's throughout downtown Milford. We also offer multiple scholarships totaling about $7,000 through our endowment, a mini grant program, which we are reinstating for local artists, and seed money to help start the family programming. We have a staff of 2 full-time, 2 part-time people, 3 program committees, 2 paid contract workers, 6 volunteer co-producers for our music and other programs. Our volunteers, if you looked at the year before COVID, we had probably 632 volunteers throughout the year that volunteered for over 3,500 hours. During COVID years, it was down to about 250 volunteers and just over 1,300 hours. And last year, we totaled almost 750 volunteers and increased our hours of volunteer activities to 4,213. So I think that shows a lot of growth. We did request a larger amount, which we've requested for the past 2 years of 20,000. We were granted 5,000 more last year. So this year we requested the remaining 15 of that 20, and that $20,000 in our gift from the city will be going specifically to keep the 4th staff person, which we added during the pandemic, an admin and volunteer coordinator for just 20 hours a week and about $17, $18 an hour. So that person was hired through a 2-year grant through the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. This year we will finish out that grant, that 2-year grant. So if the full $15,000 goes forward, then we will be able to keep that person on. Again, the city's generosity and foresight to support and present an arts council for its community, and also aid in securing 1, if not 2 buildings for us to provide events and programming for everybody, is incredibly important and unique to the state of Connecticut. And anytime we have the opportunity to express that gratitude and express or put forward the city of Milford as a beacon for other communities, we do that. So we'll certainly answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Paige. Any questions or comments from the board? Scott?
I got a quick question through you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Paige, good to see you. Same question that I asked Lenore. I'm just curious, like, what percentage of the 90,000, what does that represent as your overall budget?
So our overall budget, and in fact, if you were looking at our budgets over the past number of years and this year, it looks like we have a huge jump. When I started, the working budget was about $215,000. And up until this past year, we were looking at what seemed to be a great growth in pushing ourselves as our revenue and expenses went up to about 285,000. This year, our revenue estimates are 370,000 with expenses at 390. That is because we redid our budget and we extracted expenses from, and this goes way, way, way back from the budget that I inherited. All of the individual programs within their budget, the numbers went horizontally, but each of the programs went vertically. So all of the expenses for specific concerts were embedded within revenue. So we actually were making more than also spending more than the budget actually presented. So this is a true budget with all revenue at the top and all expenses at the bottom. So it's about, I think, well under a third.
Yeah, about 23%. Thank you.
Well, it's certainly an asset for the city, and we've put on a great programs, and we're lucky to have it.
Thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Yes,
There for you all.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care. All right, moving on to Transit District, page 89.
Good evening. I didn't change my name. Just using it.
I think every department head has been a female so far. You're the one exception.
Well, I try to go along by using my wife's device at home here.
You saw the program note.
I guess so. The Transit District operates a variety of services. We operate a local fixed route, a long haul reverse commute service from Milford to Norwalk, which is called the Coastal Link, an ADA van service, and a door-to-door service for the elderly. We also operate several Metro North commuter parking lots through a lease with the state of Connecticut, and 2 railroad stations, one of which we're the landlord for the Arts Council. They still owe me about $10 for $1 a year rent that they haven't paid for a while. I'll have to talk to Paige about that. And the other station now, we used to have a concession area there, but since COVID, we haven't been able to get another one in. And we do have an attendant there in the morning for rush hour now to give information and keep the bathrooms open and just have a place to shelter in bad weather, in all weather, actually. The increase, we're looking for an increase this year, which is unusual. We haven't asked for one in a while. We haven't seen an increase for several years. The main reason for the increase are increases in, things that everybody's experiencing in workers' compensation, healthcare. We are contractually obligated for an increase for our operators of the van services. A couple new services this year that'll be upcoming. In April, we'll be starting a micro transit service in town. It's going to be a service that's open to the public for anyone. Very similar to a Lyft or Uber service. It's going to operate in the hours that the district doesn't operate or serve now, mainly in the later evenings and on the weekends and later on the weekends. That's scheduled to start the first week of April. It also will be accepting. We're preparing for now 2 electric 35-foot coach buses. So we have to do many modifications at the facility to accept them with, for circulation, because they're going to be parked outside, and also for the electrification, for powering them. We'll be receiving them hopefully at the end of June. So that'll be an interesting experience. It's been an interesting experience, a learning experience for me in this new flavor of the decade of electric vehicles. The increase that we're asking for represents a small portion, but a very important portion of our budget. It's about 8% of our overall capital and operating budget. But the support that the city gives us is vitally important for us to get other grants, to get state support, which is a bulk of our operating monies, a portion of our capital money, and the bulk of our capital money. Both of the capital money comes from the federal government. So we're very appreciative of the support. It's been a long-term support, and it's very well appreciated, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Henry. Any questions or comments from the board?
Hey, Mr. Janak, where are your vehicles stored?
We have a facility on Research Drive. If you're really familiar with the Cracker Barrel on Research Drive, if you just go to the end of that road, we have a 25,000 square foot administrative maintenance and storage facility there.
Okay. And what was the name of that new Uber Lyft? What you described it as, like an Uber or Lyft service?
It's called Micro Transit. It's going to be called Milford Micro. We're unfortunately, I said unfortunately, I should have said that, but because I'm not used to partners except dancing partners, but we're going to partner up with M7 livery service out of West Haven. You might have seen their vehicles around. Because this is going to be an app-based service. We'll also be able to call in.
Oh, you're frozen.
Janice froze.
Yes. Yes. All right.
Well, Lauren, your question broke the meeting down. We'll have to go
Magic.
home.
Dinner time. Oh, he's
Henry, we
back.
lost you for a little bit, but I think we got the.
We got the gist.
idea.
Okay. And
Any,
that's
any questions, comments from anyone?
Do you get any money from other towns? Because I know our buses go out of town, correct?
well, we go out of town, but the bus that goes out of town the most is the Coastal Link that goes from Milford to Norwalk. That's also operating in conjunction with Greater Bridgeport Transit and Norwalk Transit. So at any peak time, there'll be 6 vehicles on that run from Milford to Norwalk with a combination of Milford buses, Norwalk buses, and Bridgeport buses. It's a very unique service, actually, nationwide. Very few places you're going to find that 3 individual entities like that are cooperating in that fashion. We've been doing that since 1992. But one of the larger benefits for Milford is the employers in Milford, because this bus travels mainly along the post road. It takes 2 hours to get there. The object isn't for a person to ride the bus the whole time, but the object is for people that won't have to change buses, wait for transfers, and be able to have an efficient, quicker way to get to where they're going. And in Milford, you'll find that many of the businesses along the post road, the very high usage of transit to get their employees to work, and that's been a very successful service. But in other towns, other than that, we take people from Milford to Greater Bridgeport, Greater New Haven. So in the towns in between, those services have gone down considerably in the past several years because many medical facilities in Milford have grown up, especially kidney dialysis centers, which that was a bulk of our out-of-town service because mainly to New Haven and Bridgeport. But now there are two places where you can get a seat in dialysis in Milford, which has taken some of the burden off that. But there's still a lot of long-term cancer care out of town, things of that nature that we service.
But you're not receiving any grants from, you said Greater New Haven or the Bridgeport area. They don't provide any.
If there were grants out there for them, I'd get them, but it's not how it works.
Yeah. And are you seeing riders usage is up again?
It's come back very strong on the fixed route buses. It's been slower on the van services for a bunch of reasons. A couple of them because of the change in people's work patterns of working from home now. Whereas if they had an elderly parent or grandparent or someone that they were taking care of or associated with, that they'd be able to do some transportation now because they're home much more than they were before. That's one thing. Another thing, we had a lot of group trips for handicapped youngsters and seniors, and some of those programs, in the case of the youngsters, instead of bringing them to the program, the programs moved into the schools during COVID. So there was no need for that portion of the transportation. But it's been building back up. We're probably 70% back from COVID, and a few more things coming up in the future. We'll be back to pre-COVID pretty soon.
That's great. Thank you.
Just through here, Mr. Chair, one question. Henry, how you doing? The 360 and change grant, what does that represent as your overall budget?
That represents 8.3% of our overall operating and capital budget. The capital budget fluctuates from year to year, depending on how much what federal grants we're able to procure for mainly for buses, for some other items, preventative maintenance, and a few other things.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. If there's no other questions or comments, we will move on to Beth Health Center. Thank you, Henry. Have a good evening.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good work. Thanks. Okay.
Hello. Hi,
Hi,
everybody.
Jennifer. Welcome.
Nice to see you. I am joined by our new president of a board of directors, Justin Kobe. So thanks for being with me tonight, Justin. It's certainly nice to see everyone here. As a quick reminder of who we are and what we do, we provide a continuum of services for folks who are experiencing housing instability, homelessness, hunger, and food insecurity. So that looks different depending on each individual person. We have diversion services that offer homeless prevention, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we've done over the past year. We're serving much larger population in the homeless prevention program, which is where we want to be doing most of our work, right? Outreach and engagement is all about building trusting relationships and focusing on permanent housing for individuals who are unsheltered in the Milford area, unhoused in the Milford area. And then we have our year-round emergency shelter program for men, women, veterans, and families, as well as our winter shelter program, No Freeze, as many know it to be, that is open from mid-November to April 1st, and hopefully not a day longer. Winter feels like it goes on forever. And then we have our community kitchen. We changed the name from Soup Kitchen to Community Kitchen to really be more inclusive as to what the space is. And then our supportive housing program, Liberty Point, which turned 13 this year. And we are celebrating the fact that in 13 years, no one in that supportive housing program has ever returned to homelessness. So a couple additional kind of ancillary services that we provide, just so folks know. We do partner with Bridges Healthcare. On Mondays, they provide their mobile mat services to support folks who have opioid use disorder and are seeking treatment. That's been a very successful partnership over many years. We also have Cornell Scott Hill Health Center with us on Tuesdays to provide acute medical services to anyone. These are public services, anyone who's in need of acute medical care, no appointment necessary. And then we offer a number of programs for folks that are utilizing our programs. I mean, we have a public shower that's open 7 days a week for 25 showers a day, very robust program, used very regularly, provide toiletries, towels, hair dryers, all that stuff, as well as we work with a number of our community partners and Milford Board of Ed for programming for our families and parents, and many other additional services. I'm going to quickly walk through just our 23, if I can just quickly share my screen, our 23 numbers. Not as fancy as Deepa's. I think we're all like coveting Deepa's like graphic design efforts, but so I'm a little bit more boring with my data reporting, I guess. But so in terms of our emergency shelter program, last year we served 59 individuals, 18 women and 41 men. That makes a lot of sense because we have 12 beds for women, for men, and 5 beds for women. And then of those individuals, 43 at the point of the end of last year had exited. We're seeing significantly higher shelter length of stays. For individuals, it's 140 days. For families, which I'll go into quickly, it's even longer. The goal of our shelter program, and if you've been following along over the years as to what our numbers, our length of stays have looked like, have been much shorter. Our goal is 30 days. These are temporary beds. This is all about kind of putting everybody's lives back together as quickly as possible. This really comes down to a supply issue. We have severe housing affordability problem, not just in Milford, not just in Connecticut, but in the country. We were for a long period of time of the year 2023 working with a 2% vacancy rate across the state. Landlords, we primarily work with landlords, of course, and just move-in costs exorbitant. I mean, we have some individuals who are paying, we have many individuals, I should say, that are paying nearly $10,000 to move into a unit. And it's just absolutely crazy. So one big thing of 2023 that we really focused on was ensuring that folks were increasing their incomes while they were with us. Like, if you're going to be with us longer, let's see just how far we can get down the economic stability path, if you will. So we're not just, kind of person in, person out. And so for individuals, the average income increased by $1,424, which is wonderful to see. That doesn't mean that folks aren't coming in with income. This is increased on top of. So either folks who qualified for Social Security or Social Security disability and weren't connected, we made sure they're connected. We have a program called SOAR that works specifically on increasing folks who qualify for these services. If you are receiving disability benefits but want to increase your income, and get a part-time job. We're working on that. And then of course, upskilling people to full-time employment. So, the major, and I just mentioned it here, the top reasons why folks are coming to the Bethel Center are evictions, expenses exceeding income, which of course is kind of folded into evictions. And folks, we had a lot of folks who for a long time were doubled up through the pandemic and are no longer able to stay in those environments. We served 13 families last year. Again, length of stays, 210 days, way too long. These are temporary beds, meaning that this does not feel like home to anybody. And so this is really all about driving down these length of stays, getting folks into their homes as soon as possible. And that's really why we've scaled up, which I'll talk quickly about, but we've scaled up the homeless prevention work that we do significantly because we know that we can do more of that, whereas shelter is a very finite resource. I know there's a lot of numbers on the screen, but again, eviction, expenses exceeding income, and can no longer stay with family or friends are the primary factors of why people are experiencing homelessness at this time. And I can go into a lot of the kind of external factors and internal vulnerabilities that cause homelessness for our community. But for our No Freeze program, this is up to date data, so it doesn't just end at the end of 23. We've served 69 guests in that program. 11 of those folks have been homeless for 1 year or longer. One veteran. The average length of stay in this program to this point, has been 19 days. 11 days. And we are funded to serve 15 people in this program. We've been seeing, an average of 19 a night, but there have been nights and days. We've had 4 mandated stays of 3 days or longer where we're open 24 hours for this program. We've seen many days hit 22, 23, 24 individuals. And so just expressing the great need out there for folks who are unsheltered. People who are in our No Freeze program are connected to resources just like every other program. And so we're excited to say that folks in that program are either moving along to emergency shelter, kind of more, I don't want to say permanent, but kind of a more consistent shelter resource, or are returning to family through family restoration efforts by our case management, and moving into rentals. Again, same thing, doubled up, expenses exceeding income, evictions, or foreclosures. We also serve meals in that program, and so we've served about 4,000 meals to date. As you can see, our homeless prevention efforts, we call that diversion. And so that might not be a familiar term to people. So homeless prevention is kind of exactly the same. In 2021, we served 426 individuals. So that was over a 2-year effort. And with kind of scattered funding, if I could say that, it was a newer program that we were starting, and we got some funding through CDBG CV dollars to do that. 2022, 199, and these are numbers for Milford. In 2023, we served 347 folks in this program, and so that doesn't mean that so people that we serve in this program are folks that are 30 days or less from the date that they believe that they will become homeless. So it could be that they're getting that notice to quit, or they're getting that eviction. But most of the time it's that they were, they've already been through that process and they're doubled up or staying with family. They're couch surfing, and they, don't have a next step. And so they're reaching out to us for assistance. We've seen the majority of folks, I didn't go into ages, but the majority of folks that we see in this program, our homeless prevention program, are over the age of 55. So really just naming like housing affordability and income for people who are older adults. We also saw a significant increase in our community kitchen needs. Last year, we served a total of 48,214 meals. If you see what we were tracking as those previous years, this is over a 10,000 meal jump. I think I did some math. I don't know, 44%. Okay. A 44% increase from 2022. We've heard it. Deepa was expressing just where this is, but it reflects, exactly what we're getting as data from our emergency shelter services and our homeless prevention program, is that folks are just living on tighter budgets, and the need to supplement by a free meal in the community kitchen is just greater for more households. I spoke to our shower program and our medical services as well. Before I kind of come back to other materials, I just wanted to quickly share. I share these numbers with you all every year because I think it's really important to just understand, like, yes, we're doing all these things, we're serving, tens of thousands of meals. We're doing more homeless prevention work in the city than we've ever been doing, right, since we started a number of years ago. And just kind of where are we on this from a state perspective? These are numbers that are collected through 211, and so it is really the best data set to capture the greatest need. And so shelter and housing continues to be the number one reason why individuals from Milford, these are our zip codes, individuals in our community are reaching out to 211 for assistance. So just over 32% of the calls going into 211 are for that. And of that, nearly 60% of those calls are for shelter services. This is the number that keeps me awake at night, that an unmet need of 17%, which means that we have individuals who are seeking our resources and they're waiting. They don't have immediate connection to something today, a shelter bed today, if that's what they need. So our case management, either through homeless prevention or outreach and engagement, might be working with them, but that doesn't mean that their need is immediately resolved today. And so we continuously work on closing the gap between crisis known and crisis met, right? Because this is really talking about individuals who are in crisis. And then, of course, low cost housing, which I think is just funny that people call to, it's not funny, but people calling 211 and saying, hi, I'm looking for low cost housing. It's like, what a dream that would be. That sounds like, okay, I'll get you to the low cost housing line. But, and then certainly just looking for assistance in other areas. Before I, kind of, if I can unshare my screen, stop share. Before I kind of close, I recognize that we are asking for an increase this year. We had a number of years where we had steady funding, consistent kind of flat requests, and most recently over the past several years, we've been asking for an increase. We're actually decreasing the percentage to Scott. I don't know if that question was also coming at me, but we're decreasing the percentage of funds that we're asking for our total operating budget. A lot of this is really having to scale up overall to best respond to the needs that we're seeing in our city. So the request, our original request of $100,000 is just around 6% of our operating budget, where we're serving way more. I mean, and there are many of our programs that are Milford only, right? So, so just so folks kind of know where we are on that. And lastly, and I hope this isn't, too much of a point, but I find it very difficult to kind of describe what our work is. People kind of say, okay, you serve meals, you do this, you do that, but how do we really address kind of the root causes and help folks really kind of sustainably reestablish themselves? And so I found the best way to kind of share this information recently, you tell me, is just in the amount of training that our staff receive and are in the community equipped to utilize. So, if you bear with me, I mean, the staff that are employed in these programs that are doing this work aren't just housing experts or homeless experts. They have training and expertise in overdose prevention and Narcan, domestic violence prevention and response, human trafficking identification, mental health first aid, CPR, AED, and bloodborne pathogens training, motivational interviewing, trauma-informed care, housing first principles and practice, employment readiness, benefits support, fair housing policy implementation. And of course, they are trained in the case management around employment, transportation, childcare, healthcare, and resources. And that's really just describes the needs of this population that we serve, right? That everybody is so uniquely different, and the reasons why they're sitting in front of us are so uniquely different. We have to be alert and aware and ready to respond. And so I've talked a lot and would love if Justin had anything to say for him to have a few moments as well.
So Jen, I think you covered so much. I think, I think everyone here probably knows the gem that we have at the Bethel Center in Milford. The work we do is important, and it's growing in demand. We're seeing every year more and more demand for our services. So we appreciate the support the city gives us. And of course, Jen, we appreciate the work you and your team do.
Thanks, Justin. I didn't pay him to say that. Justin is one of our 120 volunteers monthly that are in our center operating our community kitchen, our front desk support, are moving furniture to new units. We have a staff of 25 right now, and that's at our highest point during the winter season. And so we could not accomplish this without nearly 4 times the amount of volunteers than we do staff on a monthly basis. So anyway, happy to answer questions.
Well, thank you, Jennifer and Justin. Yes, it's quite impressive, the scope of services that you provide, and on the same hand, a little depressing of the need that there's such need in the community. But certainly, we're lucky to have Bethel in our community. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I'll just echo Brian's comments. Thank you for everything you do, and you answered my question a couple minutes ago, so thank you.
Good. Well, thank you both. Thanks for your patience. You weren't last, but almost last. Bridges must have done something wrong.
It's okay. No problem.
Us Jen stick together, so you can't. We're on the same team here.
Primacy and recency. Those are the.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Have a good night.
Have a good evening. Hello, Jen. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you? Good to see you all.
Yes, so it's Bridges, page 89.
Yes, so I just want to echo everyone's sentiments around the city's generosity for providing funding to Bridges Healthcare for such a long period of time. As I've said in the past, and I'll certainly say it again, the dollars that you provide to Bridges help to bridge a gap between insurance reimbursement and grant funding that we get to cover our biggest programs within the organization. And those are our adult and child outpatient programs. While we do provide a wide range of support services in the community, including case management, we have a number of innovative models that we just recently implemented in the last few years. Our outpatient services are really our core services. And we see folks in the community that come in every year. This year, we saw over 1,600 Milford residents, which is over 60% of the people that we serve in the organization, coming in with a multitude of issues from situational depression to serious and persistent mental illness. So we're seeing the spectrum of mental health issues coming through our doors. I think the one thing that's probably the most notable at this point is we thought we were coming out of the COVID-19 sort of residual impact. There was a child mental health crisis that was taking place about 2 years ago. And it looks like it's sort of reeling out of control again. I just learned recently that our child outpatient department has a wait list of 6 to 8 weeks to get into an appointment, and even longer for evening. the issues that we're seeing with some of our children. And that's part of the reason why we've been responsive by applying for federal grant funding to allow us to go into the school system. So we are going to be working with the Milford schools, and we'll be in West Shore Middle School, Jonathan Law High School, and eventually in Foreign, providing clinical support to students using an evidence-based, trauma-informed approach, because we recognize the complex behavioral health issues that are being presented before us. And really a lot of those include not only suicidal ideation, but also homicidal ideation. So you're seeing younger kids coming into schools with high levels of aggression and trauma that need to be addressed in a setting where they can be seen and they're more likely to access treatment. But the programs that you fund through the city of Milford are at our main site, the child outpatient and adult outpatient services. So the school-based services are separate in terms of funding. Still, even at our main site, we're still seeing the same complex issues that children are presenting with. I just want to give you an idea of why the city of Milford funding is so important for us. Our child outpatient department operates on a grant from the Department of Children and Families, and it has for many years. That program is funded only 30% by that grant, and the rest of it is funded through reimbursement. We take in 70% of the folks that we see are Medicaid eligible and are either get assistance to be put on Medicaid or are already on Medicaid Husky. And those are the clients that we see day in and day out. The reimbursement rate for mental health services and medication management is exorbitantly high. And oftentimes there's a gap between the reimbursement that we get and the grant funds that we receive from DCF. As of this point up to today, as a matter of fact, I looked at where we're running in terms of our program service revenue for our outpatient programs, and we're $130,000 under budget. So that gives you an idea of the impact that just being down a number of clinicians has on our operations, and not being able to see people because we're at capacity and then we're not able to provide the service. From fiscal year 2022 to 2023, we saw a 30% increase in the number of requests for services. And this year so far, we've seen a 15% increase in the number of requests for clinical services and clinical evaluation. So folks come in, they get a clinical assessment, and then they're eventually seen for a psych evaluation where they may be eligible to get medication if they need it. And it takes longer to even get into the psych evaluation. So the longer that kids have to wait to get through our doors, the longer they have to wait to get the medication that they need. So while our discussion now isn't going to resolve that problem anytime soon, at least it's very, I think it's a lot more encouraging for us to know that we have support from the city of Milford to assist with covering the costs of those outpatient clinics.
Well, thank you, Jen. And it's the services you provide are essential. It's just a little disconcerting that there's such a demand and need for them. But that's what we have to deal with. So is there any questions or comments from the board?
Just as an FYI, total funding from City of Milford is about 2% of our total operating budget.
Thank you, Jen.
Sure.
All right, well, we appreciate your patience and all your hard work for the community. If there's
No
no
problem.
further questions from the board, I will entertain a motion to recess until Monday after our regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we recess until Monday, February 26th at 5:30.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Lauren. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Well, thank you all. I think it was a very productive meeting tonight. A lot of good presentations and information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Peter, for your attendance. And
Thank you.
we didn't get to call on you tonight, but I'm sure we'll make sure we double up on Monday.
Sounds good.
All right, good. Thank you both. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you,
Good
Justin.
night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Right.